Okay, imagine holding this tiny bowl, right? An ancient Chinese porcelain bowl. And it's sold for a record HK $294 million back in 2017. But then, get this, just a few years later in 2023, two broken shards, just pieces of the same kind of ancient Ru porcelain sold for HK $650,000. It really makes you wonder, is this just crazy hype or is there some kind of, unmatched artistry behind it? So today we're doing a deep dive into Ru porcelain. It's this ancient Chinese craft, a tradition really, passed down for well over 1,000 years.
Exactly. And our mission for you today is basically a journey. We're going conceptually to Ruzhou in Henan province, which is the birthplace of this legendary craft. We want to unpack why collectors are paying these, frankly, eye-watering prices.
Yeah.
And also, how are today's artisans keeping this incredible heritage alive?
Okay, let's unpack that. What is it that makes these pieces so incredibly valuable? Especially, broken shards fetching that kind of money.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? The absolute heart of the mystery seems to be the glaze. That elusive Celadon glaze. We talked to Master Zhu. He's a fourth-generation ceramic craftsman there in Ruzhou, and he basically said, look, collectors are paying for the color, the specific sort of ethereal color. And the color is so mysterious. Its origin story is actually, well, it's said to come from an emperor's dream.
A dream.
Yeah, the legend goes the emperor who's on, this was back in the Song Dynasty, he dreamt of a color like the sky just after rain clears. Soft, translucent, kind of full of emotion.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a story. But how did they translate a dream into actual pottery? What were the rules that came from that vision?
Well, that dream wasn't just, a vague idea. It set very specific aesthetic standards for Ru porcelain. It meant ash gray clay bodies, specifically chosen to look like jade. And absolutely no painting, no fancy embellishments, nothing like that. The beauty had come purely from the form, the elegant shape, and of course that exquisite, really subtle glaze.
Okay, so given those standards, precise, almost poetic, what did it actually take, physically, to create something that's supposed to be perfectly imperfect, embodying a dream?
Well, that's the thing. Even though Ruzhou naturally has lots of the right stuff, this high phosphorus clay, agate minerals making Ru ware is incredibly difficult. So many variables can just completely change the outcome. The exact soil mix, how old the minerals are, and especially the kiln temperature. Get that wrong, and you ruin whole batches. And think about this. Each firing uses several tons of wood.
Tons? Wow.
Yeah. And it's only when everything aligns just perfectly, nature craftsmanship, the fire, only then can you get a successful piece, one with that soft, jade-like look and a color that seems to shimmer and change a bit in the light.
That level of precision, the sheer effort, makes you wonder how many ancient pieces could possibly have survived all this time.
That's a really critical point. True Northern Song Ru pieces, they're exceedingly rare now. And most of the known ones, well, they disappeared overseas a long time ago.
Right.
If you go to the British Museum, for instance.
Gallery 95, right? I read that.
That's the one. They have some displayed right there. And there's this sort of sad feeling among many in China that these ancient treasures might never really come back home.
It's kind of hard to fathom, isn't it? Something so precious, a secret so guarded, just lost for centuries. How did we even get back to making Ru porcelain today if the knowledge vanished?
Right. So that brings us to this really remarkable modern chapter. It starts back in March 1957. Premier Zhou Enlai actually gave a direct order, revive the lost Ru glaze. So they set up the Guayan porcelain factory right there in Ruzhou. They pulled together this team of master potters, researchers, everyone they could find. And you have to remember the context back then. Fine porcelain was incredibly valuable. It wasn't just art. It was practically currency. It could be traded for cutting-edge technology with countries like Germany and Japan. And Master Zhu, the craftsman we mentioned, he was part of that effort. He and many of today's artisans were key workers in that factory. They were the generation that basically rebuilt this legacy from scratch.
Wow. An enormous undertaking, it sounds like. What were the actual sort of day-to-day struggles for those pioneers, bringing it back from the brink like that?
Oh, the hardships were immense. No vehicles back then for this sort of thing. Workers literally hiked deep into the mountains to find the right raw materials that carried them back themselves. And the ancient recipe, totally lost. So it was sheer trial and error. Thousands upon thousands of experiments, just trying to figure out the right mix, the right firing, and any tiny imperfection, a speck of dust landing at the wrong moment, a hairline crack from the heat, could ruin an entire batch in the kiln.
Just heartbreaking.
It was absolutely painstaking, just fueled by relentless dedication, really.
It sounds like pure willpower kept this craft going. So after that whole incredible journey, how does Ru porcelain touch our lives today? What does it mean for us now?
Well, it means that, thanks to decades of that kind of work, this sky Celadon color, which was once basically only seen in museums, has gradually started entering everyday life. It's not just locked away behind glass anymore. People can actually own pieces, use them. And critically, yes, the older generation of craftsmen, they are aging, but they're actively passing on their knowledge to apprentices, to their own children. There's a real hope this craft will endure.
Beyond the history, though, there's a real art and science to the firing itself. That sounds fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. It's humbling, actually. You realize that even with millennia of pottery making behind us, creating Ru porcelain still demands immense skill. Watching Master Zhu work the clay, it looked effortless, but you know it's not. He made something stubborn seem supple. It really hits you how much learning is involved. He's at least 3 years, minimum, just to get the basics to produce a high-quality piece.
3 years just to start getting it right.
Yeah. And despite all our modern tools, industrial kilns, precise temperature controls, making fine porcelain hasn't actually become that much easier. Think about this. A sudden gust of mountain wind outside the kiln shed. It can subtly change the temperature inside. Just enough to ruin an entire batch.
No way.
Yes. So mastering the flame, understanding the fire, that is absolutely key. And in these kilns, you basically work with two kinds of flames. There's the reducing flame. That's when oxygen is scarce inside. It tends to produce those pale, sometimes blue-gray tones you see in Ru. Then there's the oxidizing flame, which has plenty of oxygen. This is used more for things like enamel, pastel glazes. It gives you brighter, more saturated colors. Totally different effect.
Okay, and you mentioned something earlier, something about the porcelain making a sound. That sounds almost mystical. Tell us about the crackling.
Yes, the kypian. That's probably the most magical moment, right after the firing ends and things start to cool. And it's not just a description, it's a real sound, an audible phenomenon. What happens is, as the piece cools, the clay body and the glaze shrink at slightly different rates. This creates these microscopic cracks in the glaze, and that process produces these incredibly delicate, almost bell-like sounds. Ting, ping.
You can actually hear it.
Oh, yes. Most of the crackling happens in the first couple of hours after the kiln is opened. But, and this is amazing, it can continue, for years, maybe decades, some say even centuries. It's like the piece is whispering through time to future listeners.
Wow, whispering through time. That's quite an image. It definitely sounds like a craft steeped in tradition, but you mentioned it's evolving too.
It is, yeah. It's not static. We heard this great little anecdote about Master Zhu, actually. He sort of playfully fused his heritage with a hobby. He crafted a Ru porcelain cannon shell.
A cannon shell? Seriously?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds a bit absurd, maybe. But for him, it's this bold but still respectful way of showing how Ru can evolve. It's meant for, a desk display or something, a conversation piece. It really underscores how Ru porcelain is, well, it's shaped by nature, it's refined by fire, and it carries these echoes of the people who made it. The wind in Ru, it's dried countless pieces of clay over the centuries. And it's also quietly aged the faces of those craftsmen, once young, now weathered by time and their dedication.
So we've covered this incredible mix, the history, the modern revival, the science, the art. When you boil it all down, what's the core takeaway for us, the insight to carry forward?
Well, I think the real insight isn't just about how hard it is to get those ancient materials, though that's true. It's more about the enduring human element, the dedication to beauty, that relentless pursuit of, well, maybe not perfection, but something close. Because yes, modern tech lets us analyze the chemical makeup of sky Celadon glaze. We know the formula now, more or less. But the specific clay, the exact minerals used by those craftsmen 1,000 years ago, formed under unique conditions, we can never fully replicate or reclaim those. They're gone.
Right. The exact starting point is lost to time.
Exactly. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's part of the story's power. Not everything needs to become some priceless museum treasure, right? Maybe true happiness, or at least real value, lies in finding beauty we can actually live with day to day.
So we've journeyed through the world of Ru porcelain today. From those mind-blowing auction prices and the emperor's dream, all the way to the dedicated revival efforts, the science of the kiln, and that sort of enduring magic in its creation, even the sound it makes. It leaves you with a thought, doesn't it?